Okay, so I did my historical analysis over the founding of cognitive psychology. Kind of the beginning of cognitive psychology was called Gestalt psychology, or is like the first taste of cognitive psychology, and it was founded by Max Wertheimer, Kurt Kafka, and Wolfgang Kohler. It was founded in 1910 in Frankfurt, Germany, and they looked at sensations and perceptions. Though it started in Germany, it quickly got moved to America when Hitler started his kind of invasion of Europe, and they moved to the Americas because a lot of the psychologists were Jewish. When they got to America, they accepted jobs as professors at universities. These positions were a lot less prestigious than the ones they held back in Europe. It was hard for them to spread Gestalt psychology because they didn't really have as big of a voice in America, mainly because they had troubles communicating. They didn't know the American language very well, and they also had trouble recruiting students. And as we all know, if you don't have students back in those days, it's hard to spread your work. So Gestalt psychology started fading in America. But a British psychologist, Frederick Bartlett, thought that memory was influenced by social and cultural factors. He expanded on the works of Ebbinghaus. What he did was he had people, British people, read a short Native American story, and he looked at how they perceived the story. When they were done, or his conclusions were, they would shorten up the story a lot because it was like a longer story. They would shorten it a lot, and they changed it to fit like their culture. So instead of Native American culture, they would change it to fit their cultures because it made more sense to them. And more of his conclusions is memory was about associations and how the mind constructs incoming information. The beginning of modern psychology, and kind of like when cognitive psychology really started coming out from the shadows behind behaviorism, is Carl Ashley's presentation, The Problem of Serial Order in Behavior. He was a behaviorist with findings compatible to a Gestalt position. What he experimented on was rats going through mazes. He would have them learn the maze, and then he would destroy part of their brain because he believed that mental processes were localized, so he would destroy a part of the brain and see how that would affect the rats, and he found that no matter which part of the brain he destroyed, they would perform, the outcome was similar. So he came to the conclusion that the brain functions as a whole, and that different parts of the brain can take over similar functions. So if like one part of the brain dies, other parts of the brain can adapt and perform that function. More important studies were done by Noam Chomsky. He reviewed B.F. Skinner on language, and he said that you cannot explain language through a stimulus-response process. He believed that B.F. Skinner should have used more meaningful materials. Chomsky believed that ideas turned into language was cognitive processes, and language cannot be explained through behavioral explanations. Ulrich Neisser was referred to as the father of cognitive psychology. He published his book Cognitive Psychology in 1967, and it's been referred to as the driving force behind the cognitive revolution. In his research, he wrote about the about perception and memory, and he believed that person's mental processes could be measured and subsequently analyzed. They said that his book was the driving force behind the cognitive revolution, but a lot of people argue that there wasn't really a cognitive revolution because cognitive psychology has really been around for quite a while, or forms of it, and it didn't switch from behaviorism to cognitive psychology. It switched to kind of a combination of both of the fields. Is there any questions? Yeah.
In doing your research, do you think that there's room for both, I guess? Do you think that applying something to one person, you see it from both behavioralism and cognitive?
Yeah, I think that you could definitely have findings from both fields because there is things that you can observe, things that you can learn from just observations, but then there's also, you can't observe perceptions and sensations, and I feel like that's a big part of psychology today. Yeah.
If Hitler hadn't started his invasions, how long do you think cognitive psych would have taken to have such an uproar in there?
That I'm not sure about.
Any guesses?
It was getting pretty big before Hitler's invasion, so probably, I'm saying 1950.
Okay.
Something like that.